Hello.
Hello.
Thank you so much for your time.
You're very welcome.
I would like you to tell me a little bit about yourself, your name, and where you're from originally.
Okay, my name is Jane Harvey. I'm originally from the UK. I was born in Southwest Wales, um, where I grew up, and um, I became an English language teacher. I, my undergraduate degree was in French, and then I did a PGC, postgraduate certificate in education, to be a high school teacher, well, a secondary school teacher in the UK, but didn't like it. And then I did various other things, and then I became an English language teacher. I did training as an English language teacher in the UK. I worked there for 5 years. Then I moved to Turkey because I knew as an English language teacher I would have to, teach in a country where English wasn't spoken. I taught at universities in Turkey for 9 years. Then I moved to Italy where I taught in English language. I was a teacher educator there in Turkey as well, language teacher educator. Moved here in 2000 to the USA in 2004, and
You've been here ever since.
I've been here ever since. Longest I've ever lived anywhere.
Wow.
I know.
So Turkey. You went to Turkey primarily to teach English, or were you traveling at first?
I went primarily to teach. I went over on vacation, fell in love with the place, and then found a job. Yeah.
Where did you live in Turkey?
In Turkey, I lived in Adana, which is in the south, not far from Syria. It's not far from where that awful earthquake happened. And I taught in the university where, anyway.
What was it about Turkey that attracted you? Mostly because you had a job to teach, or you liked the culture also? Or?
I loved the culture, and I had a student from Turkey who introduced me to a lot of the music in Turkey, and I just.
Do you like Turkish music? Because I haven't.
This was Turkish pop music, not
music.
kind of traditional Turkish music, but it seemed to me so sophisticated.
Wow.
That, and the culture felt like an adventure. I lived in France for a year when I was 18 and when I was 21 as well. So, and I loved the idea of being overseas, but the Turkish culture was similar enough but different enough to be an adventure.
Similar to what?
To Europe, Western European culture, in a sense. Yeah.
Looks like you already mentioned France and Italy and America. You're a very international person.
I feel like that. I've lived in lots of different countries. I find that I've traveled to 18 different countries in my life.
18.
But never visited Ireland, which is the country nearest where I grew up. I'm very embarrassed about that.
Same for me. I've not visited Bangladesh or Sri Lanka or Pakistan. So you've been here the longest, you said, like almost 24 years next year?
No, almost 20 years.
Almost 20 years. 20.
Yeah.
You came here in 2004, right?
What
was, America and England speak the same languages, but they also are separated by the same language.
Two nations separated by a common language.
Common language,
yeah.
Did you have any? I'm sure you must have met other Americans in England or Turkey, other places.
Actually, yeah, my first encounter in America with Americans was when I worked in Ankara, in a university there for a few years, and there I came across Americans and would collaborate, with peers with Americans for the first time, and the language wasn't so much an issue there because we were all used to speaking
different languages.
Yeah, as to second language speakers. So
right.
But I did notice some differences.
Did you have to get used to some new idioms, American idioms, which you were not so used to? Or people were like, when I talk to you, said I say my name is Jane Harvey instead of Jane Harvey. You have to like readjust to American,
Well, actually, my ex was American, and so I lived with her for a long time, and a lot of the people that I socialized with were American. So I can't remember. I mean, I remember some, we say Bob's your uncle, and nobody understands what that means. And yeah, there were idiomatic issues.
Can you
And
explain to me? I don't understand either. Bob's your uncle?
Bob's your, when you say if you do this and then you do that,
Right.
Bob's your uncle means it's sorted, it's fixed. It's, yeah.
I know another saying in English says something like, "Oh, it's all gone pear-shaped."
All pear-shaped. Yes. Yeah.
So all gone bad, right?
Yeah. Right.
Right.
Yeah. There's, and even now, there's some,
Right.
even after 20 years, there's some idiomatic stuff that I don't get, especially regional
I met an
references.
Englishman from London in Virginia, and he and I became good friends. We were sitting in a coffee shop one day, and he was listening, sort of eavesdropping on another table where like a bunch of American kids, 16, 17, 18-year-olds, they were doing crosswords. And they couldn't come up with a word for four-letter word for hacks. And he was like, he knew it. He said like, come on, it's duty.
Oh.
And those people laughed, like, duty?
Yeah. Right.
That means something totally different in
Yeah.
America.
Right. And honestly, I would have had struggle with that, having been out of the UK for what, 30 something years.
Right.
I would have struggled with that too.
Right,
Yeah. But
so what do you think after living here for 20 years in America? Do you think what does it take for anyone who's a newcomer who's coming to America as a student or worker for the first time? What do you think? What kind of things can they indulge in, or become familiar with to make their lives a bit more easy? Do you have any suggestions as an English teacher
well,
in your previous life?
as a language teacher, I'd
Right, as a
say
language
speak
teacher.
slowly.
Yeah, speak slowly.
But don't see your accent and your English as a deficit.
Okay.
I can do this in 2 languages. Can you? That would be my thing. I know that there's not always appreciation for bilingualism in this country, but yeah, speak slowly and clearly. But also understand that Americans want, and not just Americans, but Western, want everything to be clear and explicit. Don't suggest something and presume understanding that language-wise, and read, watch TV, listen.
Thank you. Can you elaborate on don't assume everything? What do you mean?
I mean that idea that if you want to say yes, if you want to agree to something, you have to say yes. You can't just say some positive things and assume always that your listener will understand that you agree. Yeah,
so you're talking about both parties, not just newcomers to America, but also
right.
Okay.
Yeah. Americans Americans will be very explicit and fairly direct as well.
So they will say something and say, "So, do you agree?"
Yeah.
Right. But Indians or suppose some other people from other countries might say something and assume that the person I'm talking to has already agreed.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. So that, how do you navigate that? How do you ask them also,
You
like,
can,
hey,
yes.
right?
Don't assume.
Don't assume.
Ask.
Ask.
And I think because
that can ease some of the confusion, right?
Right. Yeah, and obviously there's so many different ways that people react to international people coming here. Some people are welcoming and friendly and interested, others maybe less so. So don't take it don't take it personally if if you feel a negative reaction. It's not about you. Don't take it personally.
So don't think that you're not welcome. That can change from person to person,
right.
how they react to you.
Right. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
How about the work culture? Because most of the time for the last 20 years, you've also worked here, right?
Yes.
So how do you find working with other nationalities and American people? What's different? What's similar?
Um, it's just, I've worked mostly with English language teachers,
Right.
most of whom have a very kind of international, broad,
Mhm.
welcoming mindset. So I haven't noticed a huge difference working with domestic people and working with international people, but um, I don't know, and I've been here so long that I'm so embedded in the culture that maybe I no longer perceive the different. If you'd asked me 15 years ago, I might give very different answers. You know what I mean?
I know it's become part of your life, right?
Yes. Yeah.
You're right, because I've also been here the same amount of time, and some things don't surprise me anymore, which did a while ago.
Yeah. I don't. I think one thing that I would say to anybody coming to the US is just understand that so much in this country is based on money. You know, commerce is everywhere. Advertising, cost for healthcare. It's a very commercial
Do you think
culture.
is the university system in England and America are different because they think the university system is more commercial here?
No, I'm not talking about the university system
Okay.
here.
Okay.
I don't feel that this university is, although I was surprised when I first walked on campus to find Starbucks in the library. What? So there's that commercial element that, I think for someone coming from a different culture might be, whoa.
Do you have a Starbucks in UK, Wales University, inside the library?
It was the university, catering that we had always, not
Starbucks.
not you know outside sources.
So you said you have to understand that a lot of the things in this country is money based. So I mean, like it's all about business, money.
I think so. Yeah.
Right.
When TV without ads,
Right. Right.
you never see it. I grew up with the BBC.
Right.
Now I understand. I mean, the UK has changed since I left. So my contrasts are, the UK 30 years ago. But I grew up being able to watch the BBC without a single advert ever.
Right.
To watch a whole. I never thought soccer would be televised here because 45 minutes without an advert, I didn't think it would work.
But now people go to watch Super Bowl they just want to watch the ads.
Ads, exactly.
Not the game.
Yes. Yeah.
So you're right there. What other aspects of American culture seem different in terms of commerce, money, and not money?
The healthcare. The fact that you see hospitals advertising, hospitals run for a profit, just seem so wrong to me and so different from the UK's National Health Service.
I think it has changed other places too, right? In India, when it has become very money.
Oh, really?
Oriented. Yeah. I mean, like there are government hospitals, but new hospitals are cropping up, and they're all trying to, they ask for money first before even they perform the surgery, so it can be worse than here sometimes.
Whereas, in 2015, my mum, she had an aneurysm and she was in a coma for 11 days in a hospital. And the family was there. We were there every day, until she died. Money never mentioned. Never insurance, nothing.
Wow.
For 11 days, she was in this, intensive care unit.
This was in Wales.
This was in the hospital where she was head of the physiotherapy department at one stage in her life. But, and that you couldn't even imagine that here.
You go and get a blood test and you get a bill soon after. Yeah, that is different. What other? But since you've lived here for 20 years, you must like this place too.
There, I tell people one of the reasons I came here, not entirely true, but it was a reason, was the US, when I first encountered Americans in Turkey and worked with them alongside them as educators, it struck me how different the US approach to education was and the UK approach to education. In the UK, you know, the standards, you have these standards on the wall or wherever, you know, these standards. The teacher's job, I will, you know, work my butt off to try and get you to reach those standards. But if you don't reach those standards, you fail, right? And whereas here, it's much more about yourself as a whole person and your potential, and you're reaching your potential rather than trying to reach these abstract external standards. And so it's a much more whole person, humanistic approach to education, much more kind of, I don't know, just, yeah, you achieve your potential rather than having to follow the direction that's dictated for you. You know, you look at the universities in the UK, you join a program, or this, again, this is 30 years ago, I don't know how it is now, but you join a program, boom, boom, you have to follow that direction. Here, you've got such, you know, variety. You can choose different, you know, you don't have to choose your major as an undergrad until about after 2 years. I mean, that's unthinkable. And I always said, if we could combine the British and the American approach to education, you know, have some kind of standardization, and yet have this more whole person approach to education, that would be something fantastic.
So you're saying that the American system of teaching, making an individual reach its full potential, not just hitting the marks like a grade, okay, standard 1, standard 2, standard 3, but also bring some of the UK style teaching, and then it will become better?
Well, you know, you think you've got 2 or 3 undergrads here.
Right.
What are their GPAs? Okay, yours is 3.5, yours is 4. But in one school, my 3.5 might actually be very different from your 3.5.
Right.
You know, because very different schools without
right.
external standards. And that, you know, I'm again, coming from the UK where there were these very strict standards, that seemed to me very odd. But so if there could be some kind of standardization so that if you get a 4.0 GPA, you know it's going to match everybody else's 4.0 GPA.
One day, the last semester, I bumped into 3 British girls, undergraduate. They were part of the exchange program. They came from Exeter or somewhere.
Oh, yeah.
At USF at here. And they said the American classrooms are very different because there's a lot more discussion.
Yes.
Whereas in England, it's more of a lecture based. You know, is that?
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it may be now that the American approach to teaching at a university is much more kind of learner-centered than in the UK. I don't know.
Okay, because you left 30 years ago.
Yeah.
But you said you like this education system here, right?
Yeah.
Except if it's, with some changes, it will be perfect. But
well,
in your opinion,
I'm not an expert. That much of an expert in you know, comparing education systems, but you know, yeah, I think
sometimes it feels like in America the professors also seem like students think of professors as some kind of customer service representative or salesperson, because it's your job, you have to do it. You know, there's a lack of respect sometimes, because they think you're getting paid to do this and it's your job to do it.
Oh, so, wow. Yeah,
it's like you need to tell us what you ask from us or the syllabus or anything. It's like there's a sort of like they're almost demanding you of, because they paid the money. And
I haven't noticed that, but that's interesting.
In India, I mean, I'm comparing with India because teacher is God. You know, you can't do no wrong.
Right.
And you don't talk to professors like, you know, you're haggling to somebody in a Starbucks. You know, I didn't get my right sandwich. You know.
But you know, here the professor-student relationship is much closer, much more personal.
Right.
You know, and students expect that personal contact.
Yeah, it's very good. I mean, it's very good, but I'm talking about only once in a while that can
Yes,
happen.
yes,
That's not
yeah,
always the case.
right,
But because you're
right.
so close to the student, there can be some negatives.
Yes.
But largely I prefer this to
Right.
Indian style, you know.
Right, and I've read in, different kind of handbooks and things for teaching assistants, because I work with teaching assistants, um, that, if if you come in as an international teaching assistant and you're lecturing, and then a student says, hang on, that's not what you said yesterday. Now, to a lot of people, that could feel like a real insulting challenge. Whereas the perception in this academic culture is that's a sign of engagement. It's positive. It may not be expressed as kind of respectfully as you would perhaps want, but it's still a positive engagement. The students listening, and a challenge is a sign of engagement.
It shows that the student feels safe enough to say that.
Exactly.
Which
Exactly.
is a positive thing.
Yes. Which, again, that's that respect for you as a student. You're not down there in the hierarchy.
You're the same level.
Yeah.
Which is like, of course. So yeah, I mean, I prefer this because I used to be scared of my teachers. Like, I mean, like as soon as the teacher walks in, you stand up and say, "Good morning, professor," you know, and you can say good morning here too, but you don't have to be scared.
Yeah.
So yeah, so how often do you go back to Wales? Do you go back to Wales sometimes?
I do. When I first moved from the UK, I used to go back every 2 years. And now, because my dad is 93, and I want to go back as much as I can. I'm going back. I go back every year, at least once a year now. So yeah, and I feel much more British than American, even though I've been here for 20 odd years.
Wow.
I wear Welsh things with Wales.
You have your British passport still?
I do have my British passport.
But you also a US citizen?
No.
You're not?
I have a green card.
And you don't want to go the next step? Right?
No. Okay. My green card runs out in 2028.
You can renew it, right?
But by which time I will have retired, and I plan to retire back to the UK.
Oh, very interesting.
Which, if you'd have asked me that, 15 years ago, you want to go back to the UK? No way. But for some reason now, I do want to go back. I don't understand myself.
Well,
because I left it.
People, you grow as a human being, you change,
Yes,
your priorities change, and your taste and your everything changes,
Yeah.
So what you say now can be different 10 years from now.
Yeah, well, that's true. I might want to come back.
When you live there for 5 years, like, hey, you know what? I want to go have Starbucks in the library.
You're right. Now I remember why I left the UK.
Well, is there anything else you want to say about your American life, and or whatever? I mean, do you have anything else to add?
I think that we who live in America sometimes take a lot for granted. And I think, we're so privileged here in so many ways that, but then again, one of the things I admire a lot about the States is how much volunteering there is, and how much respect and how much kind of just advocacy and encouragement there is for people volunteering to do stuff, more so than in the UK. Again, as was 30 years ago, I no longer know, but so much is done by volunteers here, and that's always impressive.
The people are quite generous with the time.
Yes.
And effort.
Yes.
Yeah. And I have a daughter, 13 years old, 14 soon. And every time I go to pick her up, I see a guy who's parked his car along the curb, and all he's doing is making sure the kids who are crossing the street are safe. So he will stop you.
Yes.
He was like a policeman, but he's not a paid guy. He just comes and donates 2 hours every day. I think that's very very generous. I mean, that's one example. Yeah. So yeah, you're right.
Well, I mean, we're avoiding talking politics here because that's a whole
different conversation.
Decision, right?
Yeah. You're right. Well, thank you so much for your time, and
Thank you.
thanks for
Interesting.
coming, and thanks for sharing your insight about how to navigate language and conversations with people in America at work and at school, newcomers. Thank you.
Thank you.